Thank you for joining me today for this special video. My name is Erin Paskey. I am the owner of Nashville Dyslexia Center. Nashville Dyslexia Center is a private tutoring service to teach students with dyslexia how to read and spell. Besides providing students with the very best in individualized instruction, I'm on a mission to educate our community about dyslexia and to empower parents to help their children thrive. Today, I'm joined by Nicole Holcomb. Nicole is the author, creator, and mom behind the website and podcast, Dyslexia Mom Life. She is passionate about helping moms raise healthy, happy, and thriving dyslexic sons and daughters. Welcome, Nicole. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Erin. I look forward to our conversation today.
Me too. Now, I've asked you here, Nicole, to share your family's journey with dyslexia. But first, tell me and our viewers a little bit about your background.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I have kind of a unique background. I actually started out my career in elementary education. I was a Title I teacher and actually worked with small groups of students in reading and math, ironically. Quickly decided that my passion was really more more academic, social, and emotional. So I decided to go back and get a graduate degree in school counseling. And so I spent the bulk of my career as a school counselor in elementary, middle, and high school. And then I taught psychology at the college level. But I did that for a number of years. I've got some advanced degrees in that as well. But I had just always had a personal passion to go to law school. And so at the age of 30, I decided I would just put it all in and go. And so that's what I did. And ironically, at the time, I thought, yeah, I'm never going to work in education again. And it was not very long that I realized that that's still where my passion is. And so currently, I am an attorney for the U.S. Department of Education, Office for Civil Rights. And that's the work that I'm currently doing, in addition to the podcast and website that I know we'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. So I have a background in education, as also being a mom to a child with dyslexia, but I also have that background that's helpful in the work I'm doing now.
Absolutely. So, how did your family's journey with dyslexia start?
Wow. As a mom, you always think back to the times of things you probably missed. But I'll kind of fast forward to when we started really realizing there was a true concern beyond what people call developmental, right? It's maybe developmental. And if you have, we can always go back a bit if we need to. But it really started in preschool. We saw some things. She was in speech for a number of years for articulation. And then as we went into kindergarten, we had these lovely things called sight words, right? And so the sight words, we early on, we struggled with them just very early on. And luckily, she was attending a very small private school, mostly because of the articulation. There were words people could not understand. And so for social reasons as well, we just decided to keep her in a smaller environment. And so in kindergarten, as we got introduced to these sight words, which I could remember from my days in education myself, but it was different on the other side as a parent, right? And so we would work on these sight words. And luckily at the time we had a reading specialist in our elementary school, and she actually rotated through the different classes. I didn't realize till later she was Orton Gillingham trained. She was an associate of the academy. I mean, she had all the right credentials. I had no idea, right? They didn't really talk about it at the school. And so I had gotten in touch with her very early on. I think I may have stepped on a few toes with my kindergarten teacher, but I was like, hey, I'm just concerned about these sight words. And she said, well, we just kind of see what they know at the beginning of kindergarten, but usually by November, something will just kind of click for them. I said, okay. Well, it didn't. I mean, I can remember times where we would work I'm sure this is not a unique story, this part, but I remember we would work on those sight words. And Thursday night, the night before, the big test on Friday, she'd already forgot the word "the," or she already forgot, even just very, little small, what I'll call small words to myself. And I can just vividly remember sitting in the floor one time. I don't know why we were in the floor, but we were both in the floor and we were both crying because I knew she was not going to do well. I just knew she wasn't. So we continued to work through that with the reading specialist we had at the school. She did some private tutoring as well that we started doing. But at that point, I still didn't think about dyslexia. Like we were not aware that that might be in our family, and so it wasn't on our radar. But I knew she was very bright. She had very large vocabulary, and so it just something wasn't sitting right because she was really struggling. And then going into first grade, we were lucky in first grade. We had a fantastic teacher who was actually trained through a lot of the multisensory for math, and I really do think to this day that that's part of the reason Hattie had such a huge love of math. The teacher was amazing with math. But anyway, for the reading part, we were still struggling. And I never will forget, goodness, I think it was in August. She brought home this little worksheet. And every week we had a Monday column, a Tuesday column, a Wednesday column, a Thursday column. I don't think we had Friday because, we didn't have homework over the weekend. But anyway, I never will forget. She had, it was all these facts. 5 plus 0 equals what? Or 1 plus 1 equals what? And I was like, okay. So she worked on it that night. And I never will forget, I looked down at it and I thought, I can understand if she can't retrieve or can't remember what a 5 looks like. Because again, at this point, I still think it's developmental, right? But I look and I thought, well, but the example's right there, right? Like she can see how the 5 looks. She can see how the 7 looks. So why is she still writing it backwards? And at that time, I didn't know all the pieces of dyslexia and all the research of dyslexia. So in my mind, which maybe a lot of your listeners who are early on this journey, I just thought it was numbers and letters backwards. So I still remember I texted our reading specialist who I was really, pretty close with. And I said, so this is the situation and this is a concern I have. And I never will forget, it was very short, but she said something to the effect of, we are starting to see a concern. And so it was at that point that I started going with what I knew as a mom and kind of threw all that education stuff out the window, if you will. Like I've been through education courses where we talked about what's developmentally appropriate, what should be the group of things kids can do. I knew all that. But I knew my child too, right? And she'd gotten to the point where she didn't want to go to school. She didn't feel well. I'm sick. I don't feel well. And it wasn't I don't like school. It was I don't feel well. She did not physically feel well. And so that's kind of, how we started that journey. Luckily, I actually worked in the public school in that area. And I worked in the district office. I was in charge of legal compliance. So I literally walked down the hall to the special ed department, knocked on the door of the person that was in charge and said, I got a problem. And luckily for me, we had both been pregnant at the same time. We were pretty close. And so she said, let's get her tested. But of course, like many people, originally she was tested through the public school system and we got a specific learning disability, the SLD. We did not get a disability. I mean, we did not get dyslexia per se on any kind of psychological. And I was so confused for a while, which is ironic because I was trained in all those assessments. And I was like, I just want someone to say the word dyslexia, and they didn't, and they never did. And so, so that's kind of how that journey started. I mean, I can talk a little bit about the private school piece too, as far as how we decided. I've had several people ask me, how do you know when it's time to leave and go to the next place? But at that point, we were just, Aaron, it's funny because at the time I thought there's only like 10 kids in her class, maybe 12. It was really small. And I thought, wow, she's getting all this attention and we're not lost in a group of 27, 28 kindergartners, first graders. But then later, you go through the shame blame cycle of your mom piece that you do. And I thought, but now I've put not a target, but maybe a spotlight on her because she can't read, she can't write her name, and all the kids around her know it, right? So that was quite an aha moment. Do you want me to talk a little bit about
I would love to hear more about how you decided to pull her from this small private school where she is getting a lot of small group or individual attention, and your family uprooted and you moved in order to have Hattie enroll in another school. Talk to us about that decision and that huge life change.
Yes, it was and continues to be. So during the first grade year, once we had, found out that she was dyslexic, and we started, doing a lot of reading and trying to figure out what that meant for us, then, like I was saying, she started having I don't feel well, my stomach hurts. I didn't know what was going on because she seemed to love school. She seemed to love her friends and her teachers and love being around them. And so her teacher would even text me and say she doesn't feel well at school. And so I reached out to someone here. Actually, the reading specialist said, why don't you go? There's this like introductory, or what is dyslexia for parents, like little, session at night, and maybe you should go and listen. And the person she sent me to had trained her. So she knew, she was reliable. And so I went to this, it ends up being at the school we go to now, but we went to this like parenting group, and it was funny. I never will forget. You'll love the story, Erin. So we get ready to go, and Hattie's like, Mom, where are y'all going? I was like, we're going to a parenting class. I didn't think about what that sounded like to her, right? So the next day she goes to the reading specialist who she's really close with, who's the one that sent us there. And she says, my mom and dad went to a parenting class. And it's okay, babe, we've all been there. So it was kind of funny because I didn't think about it at the time. She's like, my mom needs parenting classes. We didn't tell her it was for dyslexia because at the time she didn't know yet. And so we listened. We were impressed with the warmness of the facility. We weren't really thinking at the time that would be a school we would choose. We just wanted to figure out what was going on. And it was obvious very early on that this individual had a lot of knowledge. So I went up to her afterwards and I said, hey, I've got a public school psych eval. Can I send it to you? And can you look at it? She's like, absolutely. And I never will forget, she called me. And I think that's when I shared with her that Hattie didn't feel well, didn't want to go to school. And she's like, I'm sure she doesn't. What are you doing? And, what services are you providing her? What's going on? And so I told her that, one day a week we have speech, one day a week we do OG tutoring. I may have called it reading tutoring at that point. I don't know that I really understood all that at that point early on. She said, well, I have looked at her scores and she is a classic dyslexic. I can tell you from her IQ, based on all the phonemic awareness, the language skills, I can clearly tell you she's classic dyslexic. Now, I still to this day don't know how severe it is. I haven't been able to get anyone to really explain that piece to me. But anyway, so she said she's classic dyslexic, and you need 3 to 5 days a week after school. At least, like you need to go ahead and call. She named the person I was working with. She knew her. She said, call her, tell her now, 3 days a week. So I called her up and I said, hey, this is what she's telling us to do. And I never will forget, because this goes in, I'll try to speed up. This goes quickly into how we made the decision to move, which was, we had a conversation and she's like, Nicole, there's no way, Hattie, there's just no way. You're doing 1 day of speech, 1 day of reading. And she's exhausted getting through the day. Because at that point, they're doing spelling tests. They're doing things that people tell you really dyslexic shouldn't be doing, which is the spelling tests and things of that nature. So I was like, okay. She said, I think we just need to get her through the school year. At this point, I want to say it was around April, based on some timelines of some other things that were personally going on in our life. So I want to say it was around April. And she's like, I don't think we should do it that way. Let's hit her hard in the summer and do some more things. But right now it's just too much. So I was like, okay. So I don't know. I just felt defeated, Erin. I just felt like I don't know what to do. I want to help her. She's physically not feeling well at school. The teachers were great, but they were limited to what they could do in their building as far as what they were supposed to be teaching and how they were supposed to be teaching. And so we started looking, and luckily we live in Atlanta. And so, but where we were living, there were no schools specifically for students with dyslexia. And so we went back to the school we visited that night, and we went back to several other schools in the North Atlanta area. There's several. They're quite expensive. So we found one that we thought was more reasonable for what we were looking for. And really one of the reasons we chose the school we were at, one was we toured the school. The teachers were so warm, so approachable. The atmosphere felt like where she was at. It was a small school. And they also had a religious piece to them. Where she was going was a school that was a church school. and she loved chapel, and those pieces were important to us as a family. And that was the only school that had any type. Everything else was more just an independent school, but no religious, affiliation with that. And so we did feel like that was an important part of her journey. So we applied. She did a shadow day, and we got accepted. We actually didn't apply to any other schools. We toured some other schools. I toured one school where no one spoke to me. I was like, yeah, this is not, a good friend of mine who used to be a principal said, well, lots of people tour, lots of parents tour. They probably were told just to go ahead with their instruction. I said, I get that, but I need to know I can connect with the people that are there. So I'm glad we chose where we are. That was going into second grade. Now she's in fourth grade. And you're right. I mean, it was, there was nothing local for us that was going to fit her needs. And so we made this decision as a family to sell our house, to move 60 miles away. The first year, I could not get a job closer to home. I still continued to work for the school district that unfortunately was not able to serve her. And so I drove 3 hours round trip every day. I would go in early, about an hour, it took me about an hour to get there, but no matter when I left, it was going to be a 2-hour commute home. And so it just became the balance of, okay, now I've moved out here and now I can't support her. And so I just continued to look for jobs. And the job I have now with the US government, it took me a year to get that job, a whole calendar year to get the job. It's just a very lengthy process. Or either when I fell into the hiring loop, I don't know that everybody takes that long. It took that long for me to go through the process. I know that's a very long explanation, so it may be more than you want, but that's kind of how we got to fourth grade and how we got to the school and you're right, it was a complete life change. My mom lives with us as well, so we had to uproot a lot of people. My husband still commutes an hour to the school district he works at, and so there's still lots of sacrifices as a family we're making to make this work.
I'm so glad you shared all of that, because when your child is struggling in school, no one hands you a manual or a step-by-step chart saying, here are the things you should be watching for. Here's what the kind of testing that you need. Here's what it means. Now here are the things you need to do. And even though dyslexia is becoming much more, people in the public eye or people in the community, they know more about dyslexia, but overall it's still a bit of a mystery for most educators, for most moms. And you and I can both speak to teachers not having the proper training. And I really hope that things are changing now as we learn more about dyslexia. But we learn from other people's stories, which is why I'm so glad you're sharing your story today, because you're going to help some moms and maybe some dads out there as well go, wait a minute, the things I'm hearing about Hattie are the things that I'm seeing in my child. We have to do something. It's not just developmental. So you've changed schools, or Hattie has changed schools. Talk to us for a moment about what that has meant for Hattie to be in this different learning environment.
Yeah. It's really been amazing. I mean, we were lucky. The kindergarten and first grade year at her last school, the teachers were very supportive. But I remember when we found out we were going to go to the school we were at now, the first grade teacher, I think she was more excited than we were. She's like, this is just what she needs. And I'm so glad you're going to get her somewhere that can help her. And so another thing I would tell people that are, maybe trying to decide, because it is a commitment. It's a family commitment. It's a financial commitment. But what's so neat, if you find the right school, our school is unique in that they have what's called an immersion program. And so every teacher in our building is trained through the Orton Gillingham. So everyone does multisensory. So it doesn't matter if she's in math or she's in science. It doesn't matter where she's at in her day. Everyone is trained the same way. And what else is unique, which is, well, not unique, but one of the benefits of an immersion school, which I like, is that she gets her reading remediation every day. So there's a specific time of the day where everybody stops what they're doing. Everyone is sent to their reading teacher, and that person can be different than your regular teacher. And so for the last 2 years, it's been Hattie and one other student. So there's been 2 students. I think this year there might be 3. But for the first 2 years, it was just Hattie and one other student, one-on-one with this teacher. And so for a period of time, every day, the whole school does reading. And so what that did for us as a family is it wasn't so, oh, I don't have to worry about taking her from place to place. I mean, I'll take her wherever she needs to go. So it wasn't about scheduling tutoring. It was about she was mentally and physically exhausted. It's exhausting for children with dyslexia to make it through the day. It's exhausting for them, socially, emotionally, academically. And so I really wanted, if we were going to do this, we were going to make this change. I wanted to find a place, a school that provided the immersion program where she would receive it during her day. The other piece that was really neat, which was a little bit of a hurdle at the beginning, is that they're very open that they're dyslexic. So when she had to go shadow with them, I was like, well, we got to tell her she's dyslexic, because when she gets in the building, she's going to be like, what is this all about? She's very smart and in tune to things. So I was like, well, we're just going to have to tell her. So we did. But that's the other thing, is they're very open. And I've worked in public schools pretty much my whole career until recently. And my husband continues to work in public schools, and I've got family members that work in public schools in other states, and it's the same thing. I mean, we just know that let me just say this, it looks very different in a public school. The pull out method and pulling kids and going to classrooms and calling their names, it just looks different. And at the school she's at now, everybody's on the same playing field. Yes, they all have different types. Someone may be more severe, or someone may have ADHD, but every child in the school is dyslexic. And so that's kind of a weight off, right? I don't have to worry about that. You get, as a student, I don't have to worry about that. The other piece that's really neat about her school, which I don't think is highly unique to a school that's for dyslexics, but I do like this piece of it, which is they start teaching them advocacy skills. And so although her school is what they call more of a transition school, so she won't necessarily stay there till 8th grade. They go through 8th grade. But once she goes through the, I guess, scope and sequence, I don't know if that's the best way to explain it to your audience, but as she goes through all the rules of Orton Gillingham and she completes those and masters those, she will transfer out into either a public or a private school. So she doesn't necessarily stay there once she masters the skills that she needs to master for remediation. And so what's really neat about it, though, is they do teach them these advocacy skills. We're starting to see those. I encourage those at home too. But to me, that's very empowering for her as she goes into middle and high school and college and a job, for her to be able to say, yeah, can we try this a little differently? Like, I'm not getting it this way, or, can I listen to this on an audio, or how, I'm interested to see how that advocacy piece works, but it is a very big focus in her school.
Thank you for sharing all of that. We've got a local private school here in the Nashville area that also accepts students with dyslexia. They may accept students with other focuses as well. But I have heard tremendous things too about what it means to be in an environment where you're not the odd one out, where it's just a learning style and the teachers adapt to what the child needs. I can imagine it's going to make all the difference in the world to Hattie.
Yeah, and I'll also add too that one of the things that's neat that I didn't realize till kind of the middle of the first year is that because the classes are so small, 7 or 8 students, they do kind of team teach together, or at least last year they did, but is that they're able to assess every day. And so one of their things they really pride themselves in is to assess, where is your child? And if there's something she's not getting or he's not getting, then they will step back and reteach that immediately to make sure they're mastering it. But I will say 3rd and 4th grade have been the hardest grades yet, which everyone knows, even for regular education. Those are some of the hardest elementary years. And so she even said to me the other day, she's like, 4th grade is whew, because what they're reading to learn now, right? And so it is a whole new world. And so I don't want people to think it's all easy, because it's not. It's still, I know it's going to be a struggle. Like, it is going to be a struggle. But what I'm trying to do is give her the tools and the pieces to help with that. And like you said, I just think that the fact that she doesn't have to go around, necessarily telling students, oh, I'm dyslexic, that's why I'm getting pulled out to go here. Everybody's dyslexic. So to me, it takes that off the table, although everybody is individualized as far as what their needs are. And I'm not knocking other schools, obviously, because everybody's, has their own situation. It's just for us, we feel like it's the best place for her to be right now. So
now let's pivot and let's talk about what you are working on, the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast. That's how I first became aware of you, Nicole, was listening to this podcast, and I'm hooked. I love every episode that comes out, and I learn something with every episode too. So talk to us a little bit about the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, and it's been a delight to get to know you, Erin. I found Erin on Instagram because she was doing amazing things, and I'm still learning the whole world of Instagram. So I found her through that connection. But yeah, so I for a number of years I had a blog, and it would just I'm a little bit of a perfectionist for those that don't know me, and so it would take me a while to write a blog post, and I would do a lot of research and put a lot of links in it. And it wasn't until I started commuting that first year, 3 hours, that I was like, I can only listen to so much music, right? And I can only listen to so many audiobooks. And so I thought, and my husband loves podcasts. So he was always like, let's listen to a podcast. But for years, I was like, no, 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 no. People have talked at me all day. I don't want to listen to someone else talk at me. But I have to admit, I was so wrong, because once I started commuting, I just got hooked, right? You get certain people in your ear that you just love to hear their voice, and you love to listen to their guests. And so it was like an aha moment, because I went to my husband, Chris, and I said, you know what? I said, I really started thinking through who I want to serve and how can I best serve. And I thought about, I know how busy my day is, right? And I only have the one child. So for those of you that have multiple children, bless you, because I'm doing good with the one child and the dogs I have. So I started thinking about, you know what, in the margins of her life, right? In the margins of going to car line or cooking dinner or doing laundry, she could pop in a pair of earbuds and she could listen, right? And I really feel like it worked better for me because, I mean, you've known me for a minute, right? So I'm very big in relationships. I love to talk to people and talk to them about their story and really learn about them. And so for me, it was a way for me to really connect with the information and then provide it hopefully in a way that was more digestible and easier for my listeners to really get the best benefit from. And I know from the other side, from having, you know, many people I listen to, you get to a point where you feel like you know them because you listen to them and you hear their voice. And so I really did want that connection with people. And I really, you know, you can guest blog, but it's just different when you have a guest on your podcast. And ironically, at the beginning, I even told Chris, I'm just going to do it by myself. He's like, what? I was like, I don't know. I just feel weird talking to people and I don't like my voice. And it was all these, you know, really just things that was inner stuff I had to work through. But when you focus on serving and not on yourself, then the whole world opens up. And we've had amazing response. I don't think I've told you, I just recently interviewed Mike Jones from the Michael movie. I don't know if you've watched the Michael short film yet that they just released. He's the president of Nessie. And I just interviewed him from the UK. So he's the first person I've interviewed internationally. And so, you know, it's been really interesting. It's been great to watch where the audience is popping up from. I want to say we have over 12 countries listening. We've been able to connect with people. Like, I love Nashville. So when I saw you, I was like, I've got to talk to Erin because I love Nashville. So I was like, I got to get someone from Nashville on here. And so it's just been a way for me not to only to connect with like-minded people who are passionate about helping families, but I'm hoping, you know, if I can just help one person, it's worth it. You know, if I can just, you know, help someone understand or hear that it is going to be hard, but we can do this. What Brene Brown says, we can do hard things. Like, we can do this. And so I just hope that that provides some inspiration. I really want it to be more of a, education, inspiration, positivity. I really want it to be a positive space because there is so much negativity in the world. And I know that for many of us, it's a hard journey to get from my child struggling to having a plan. And I get that. But I was just finding a lot of stuff, especially on social, was so critical of schools and teachers. And that was hard for me because that's the world I lived in for so long and still live in with my family members. And so I had to really think through how do I best approach that piece. And so with the podcast, I just felt like it was a different platform, and it's been amazing. I mean, I've only been podcasting since the last week of July. So it's really been, you know, August, September, and now October. And it's just amazing the number of downloads that we've already had and what people are resonating with, and the responses and the emails that we're getting, you know, about particular episodes. And, you know, and then just too, also connecting. I think the good thing about, if there's a benefit from the pandemic, it was people were able to see they could someone from Atlanta can reach out to you and say, Erin, I really resonate with you. I like what you have to say. Can my child tutor with you? And, maybe a year ago, we we're like, no, it's in person. But now people are realizing we can do this, we can do this virtually. And I think too, more people are open to having conversations with me as a podcaster, because fortunately or unfortunately, we've had to get comfortable with Zoom and Skype and all those things. And so I think that's opened up a window of opportunity as well.
Well, you have certainly achieved your goal of creating a podcast and a resource that is uplifting and encouraging for people who are walking this hard journey. And so where can the viewers of this video find you, Nicole?
Sure, thank you. So you can go to dyslexiamomlife.com, and there you can find a link to the podcast. We're also in all the podcast places, Apple and all the other places. I've got them all uploaded there. But a lot of times it's easier to go to the website because I have show notes. So if somebody wanted to connect with a particular guest, sometimes guests may have resources. Like one of my guests gave a mediation, something that people could do for free that was just for my listeners. So there's different benefits of going to those websites where you can get to the show notes. The other thing about going to dyslexiamomlife.com is you also have access to something new I've started, which I don't know if Erin's aware of it yet. I started a VIP resource library. So I had started putting out resources for individual, podcasts, and I thought, that's cumbersome for people. And so I just decided to take the resources I already have and put them all in a resource library. So someone would also have the benefit of being on my email list, but also have free access to these resources. So as I continue to collect those things, I'm putting those out there. And then any giveaways or anything I'm doing, it's all, there on the website. But they can absolutely connect with us at Apple Podcasts as well. I'm also on, most of the social media, pieces as well. And that's all under Dyslexia Mom Life as well. And then the other part too is that I have a private Facebook group. So it's the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast community. And I have actually put out there in the universe, and so it's happening, that I have been going live in my private Facebook group. I'm going to go live every day this month for Dyslexia Awareness Month. And so having a conversation with Erin right now is great, but I'm more of a in your ear kind of person. So to see myself speaking has been a little bit of getting used to, and sharing your face out there as well. But it's been a great experience, and I've seen that community continue to grow. And although it's still new, and so, the content's continuing to grow, people have already started engaging and asking amazing questions. So if there's someone that wants to connect, with me and get into that group, you just, you ask, just do an invite and I'll accept you. And then, it gives you an opportunity to have another level of a voice, and connect with our community as well. So that's all the ways.
That's awesome. Nicole, let's finish up by having you speak directly to that mom whose child is struggling where you were a couple years ago. Maybe they're suspecting dyslexia. Speak directly to that mom and tell her what you would have liked to have heard back then, or what you think are the most important things she needs to know.
Ooh, that's a good one. And I ask that all the time, so you would think I'd be prepared for this. I think part of it is, one of the things I've struggled with is also how to best serve, and everybody's journey is a little different. So the one thing I would say is sometimes you just need to take a deep breath, and you just need to really think through, your child best. Okay. So one of the reasons I started the podcast and the different groups that I have, especially the Facebook group, is that people sometimes in social, especially Facebook groups, to me are quick to give judgment and quick to tell you where to go and what to do. And although I do try to give resources, it is a very individualized journey, right? Your child is very individualized of what they may be experiencing. So I would say go with what you know, okay? And so the reason I say that is you may hear buzzwords like, oh, it's developmental. Oh, we can't test your child in first grade. Oh, you need to wait 3 years. If you know something's not right, talk to your pediatrician, talk to your school. Don't wait, because if we can capture these, that's the thing I think is most beneficial for us. We found out in first grade, And it may make all the difference in her life. That if we had found out in 5th or 6th, not to say if your child's in 6th grade, give up, but I'm just saying the quicker and the earliest we can identify, then we can provide those resources early for our children. So I would say that, first of all, validate yourself. Like if you've got that feeling something's not right, it is okay for you to voice that. And it's okay for you to take some time, because one of the pieces I don't think people talk about much is it's almost like going through the stages of grief. You go through all these stages of, you go through denial. Oh, this is developmental. You go through, just all the different pieces. And then you finally get to acceptance. And then you have to decide as a family, what is the best avenue? And I'm not saying the way I did it was right, by all means. I mean, Hattie may tell me 10 years from now, you completely got that wrong. But right now, I've got to go with what I know is best for her, because I know her. So as a mom, I would say, take some time. You don't want to take too much time, I know, because you want to help your child yesterday, but you need to take some time to sort through things. And that psychological, when you get that, it is a bear. And we're going to have somebody come on later this month on the podcast and walk us through an assessment. But it is a bear. I mean, it's a bear. And so I think that, just knowing that you've got to look at it and you've got to dissect it and you've got to really look at what are the strengths, what do I look for? And I think that's the thing too, is if you can capture the strengths and the gifts of your child and really nurture those, it will give your child such self-confidence and self-esteem and self-awareness that even though school is hard, they look forward to soccer, or they look forward to the coding, or doing something on Minecraft, or the science experiment, or cheerleading, or whatever it is your child loves. It can be anything. It's hard to find. And that was another reason we chose the school we did, because I wanted to have afternoons where we could have family time and we could do things to nurture her gifts, where it's not all about, you don't know how to do this. So I would just say, go with your gut, take some deep breaths. You know your child best. You've got to focus on how to get, your son or daughter remediated, and the best way to do that with the resources that are available to you. Now you have more resources than ever before. And then I would say, just love on them, figure out their strengths. I interviewed Dr. Franklin this week. It was released today, and I loved his book. And he talked about in his book about relationships. And I talked about this in my Facebook group earlier this week. The one most important thing you need to know is you are the most important thing in your child's life. The fact that you're listening today, the fact that you may be following the podcast, or you may be following Aaron, it means something's not right, or something is of concern to you. And you know what? You've already taken a big step by being here today. So I appreciate you being here today and listening. And I also, you're in the right place. You're going the right direction. Believe in yourself. It's hard, I know, but just continue to believe in yourself and love on your child, because that social emotional piece is huge. It's huge. And if they know someone cares about them and has their back and is going to take, because even sometimes Hattie will say, Mom, do we need to take a deep breath? I'm like, ooh, yes, all right, let's get into this. So she's funny. She'll even regulate me. Mom, you need to take a deep breath? Yeah, I do. So it's a challenging journey, but it is an amazing journey too, especially when you start seeing those strengths come out. We're not fully remediated, but we work each day at it. And I just try to let her know that we're here for her, and we know it's going to be hard. But we also know that she can do anything she wants to do. She says she wants to be a chemist. We shall see. So anyway, that's my advice. Trust yourself, take some deep breaths, and, figure out the plan that works best for you and your family. And, feel free to connect with me. I'm happy to answer any questions that your audience may have.
Thank you. All of that was well said. Well, Nicole Holcomb of Dyslexia Mom Life, thank you very much.
Thank you.